Welcome back to the Overheard Podcast, recorded live in Banff. My name is Daniel Rudo, and with me always is my co-host,
Matty Rage. Let's go.
Let's go. If it's your first time joining us, please don't forget to give us a like and subscribe. Got another very special guest today, true climbing legend, Sonnie Trotter. Thank you for joining us. How's the day going for you so far?
Yeah, so far so good. Yeah, slow start. Just making breakfast for the kids, coffee, and then rallied over here and didn't expect the amount of energy and traffic. So yeah, parking, but figured it out, and here we are.
That's it. Now we are rolling. How's the festival been treating you so far? How's your experience been?
Oh, it's always awesome. Like the energy, the people, the friendships that I have over 25 years, catching up with people.
Yeah.
And just new inspiration. You know, there's all these new people doing really cool things, and it's exciting to be a part of it and witness it, and also try to take that to your own life, however you can,
Absolutely.
And just apply it in certain ways. That the conversations have been amazing. Yeah, I always have fun here.
So much fun here at the Banff Center Mountain Film Book Festival. If you haven't heard of Sonnie before, if you've been living under a rock when it comes to climbing, Sonnie has spent the better part of 3 decades redefining what's possible on rock. He's known for his incredible strength across many disciplines, but especially for pushing the limits of traditional climbing, claiming hundreds of first ascents around the world, including the iconic Cobra Crack in Squamish, the Path at Lake Louise, and bold repeats of some of the hardest trad lines ever climbed, like Rhapsody in Scotland and the Prophet on El Capitan. Sonnie's story began far from granite walls of Squamish. He learned to climb inside an old grain silo. Is that true? In southern Ontario? That's wild. Becoming one of the first Canadians to climb a 5.14C and one of the few to free climb 5.14D. Since then, his career has been a blend of athletic mastery, humility, and storytelling, the kind that's inspired countless climbers to look upwards and dream bigger. Now based in Canmore with his wife and 2 kids, Sonnie balances family life with his lifelong passion of the vertical world. His new book, Uplifted, marks his 30 years of climbing, a memoir that has equal parts adventure, reflection, and campfire storytelling. It's about the psyche that drives a climber and how it evolves through time, and what it means to stay devoted to something that constantly challenges who you are. Alex Honnold called it a refreshing memoir, fast, fun, and joyous, and honestly, it's a perfect description of Sonnie himself. Yeah, thanks again for joining us. Let's start at the beginning. Climbing in a silo. How did well take us through your early starts?
So it's actually like a series, it's a big building with it's more like a mill, a grain mill, and so it's got like 4 corners and stuff. But there are some I forget what these call these types of. Like a quarter pipe buildings, So we put the owners put plywood up against those, so it created a natural angle that would continuously get harder and harder and harder, which was really fun.
No doubt.
But a lot of us didn't really know what was going on. We were just like, this is fun, exciting. It kind of felt like a skateboard culture in a sense, where you go in and you would just try to problem solve. You're just trying to you figure out these really cool sequences, and then there was always a group of us, 5 or 6 guys from high school or from around the area, and we would just sit there for 3 hours a day and just play on these walls. And it was just literally plywood with old school 90s epoxy resin type grips, with the bowling ball fingers and all this, or just sometimes like wood, plywood just like literally mounted to the wall. And we would just swing around and try to solve problems together. We'd always create problems for each other to kind of continuously push each other. But really grateful. That gym was, I think, the 5th gym in Canada at the time in 1995. Wow. So I was very lucky to have found something that I just loved doing. That was a 10-minute bike ride from my house, maybe 15. And and now I think there's 140 gyms in Canada. Great. So very much at the ground level, I guess, of this movement.
Yeah, almost like the infancy of the climbing movement in Canada, one would say.
Yeah, pretty much. I think the first gym was built in 90, 91, and then it just took off from there.
Right on. What was going through your mind at that time? Did you ever think you'd be sitting here today with all the accomplishments you've made, a book released?
No, nothing. I just knew that it made me so much, like it gave me a lot of joy to climb, like anything, skiing, snowboarding, mountain biking, skateboarding, all these things they're just flow state kind of activities.
Yep.
And I just loved being in that state. And so when I was a teenager, I was like, well, if this is the thing that gives me the most amount of joy, I'm just going to do a lot of it. And my snowboarding kind of I was into a lot of activities, but those other things, I eventually sold my snowboard to fund a trip to the Red River Gorge in Kentucky. I think I was 16. And I needed some extra money, a few $100 to go down and camp. And so I sold my snowboard, and that was kind of a heartbreaking moment, but I knew that the climbing trip would have been worth it. And so, it was more of a flow state activity, but I kind of decided pretty early on that I was committed to just following that path till like I was about 28, 29, 30. Mm-hmm. It's hard to like look 10 years ahead when you're
100%.
19 years old, but or whatever it is. But I just knew that like I had more time to figure the rest of my life out. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't get climbing out of my system, I just knew that I was not going to be like fully content with that path. And so I pretty much just went all in at a pretty young age.
What would be your advice to someone that's maybe at that point in their life where they're thinking about maybe pursuing their passion or doing what's best for their wallet or their, financial future?
Yeah, I do get asked this question, from time to time throughout the year. And it's a hard one because some people actually value like things.
Stability, yeah.
Yeah, and stability. And they might be in a relationship at the time where they value that relationship. And in order for that to work, there needs to be some level of financial stability. I always chose climbing.
Yeah, fair.
I went through a couple of heartbreaking breakups because, at the time I just wasn't ready. And so everybody has their own answer, but I would say that if there's a calling, if there's something that's like pulling you deeply, you really, we listened to that alpinism talk the other night, and that level of commitment kept coming up. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I think that can be used in a lot of different contexts, but I think you have to be pretty committed. When people like look back at my career and they're like, how do I do what you're doing? Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, you got to be willing to live in your car for 10 years. Like,
no sure.
Like I basically lived in my van from 97 to, on and off with my parents' house, but with their support, letting me like crash at their house.
There's one picture in your book specifically as I was kind of going through it yesterday where you're in a sleeping bag, or maybe I believe it's you. You're in a sleeping bag, kind of tucked up next to the side of the van.
Oh yeah,
that was kind of trying to stay warm with the exhaust or something.
That was a couple of buddies of mine. We were camping in the mountains, and that was my van that I'd been living in basically. And it started raining that night, and so my friend Will actually crawled under the bumper, and when I woke up in the morning, that's what I saw. So I took that shot. But that's the level of commitment to that I'm referring to, right?
Sure.
Is to do those things, and it's not easy, but for me, there was just no alternative.
Well, I think the big point to make here is you look at that as like a funny and a positive experience, where I think a lot of people in that situation would maybe not see it as such a positive experience. So having that mindset that I think every little bit counts. And again, you mentioned the alpinism talk we were at the other day. Just the building blocks of a big story, or like yourself, a life and accomplishment, it doesn't happen at the snap of a finger. It happens by small little steps, or one hold at a time as you're climbing towards your goal.
Yeah, I think almost every single scenario you look at, there's been a whole series of months, years of commitment and effort. Mm-hmm. A lot of people had never heard of Alex Honnold until the movie came out,
Absolutely.
For example. But that was 20 years in the making.
For sure.
Right? And so, it's like, oh, Alex is an overnight sensation after 20 years of dedicated effort. And I think most really big things take that kind of time and
that's kind
deliberate effort.
It brings me perfectly into my next question. Having spent decades, right, honing your craft, climbing some of the hardest routes around the world, especially in climbing, as you just mentioned, you don't usually find your recognition for what you've done until after right? So what has kept you motivated through injuries, failures, or quiet moments where no one's watching?
I mean, it's really easy for me because it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Like it's not, it's a really, and I can't explain why that is. I mean, a lot of the friends that I grew up climbing with, a lot of them had a lot of talent as well. Like a lot of them were super, super strong or, had a lot of endurance or they had a really good vision or really good capacity for fighting through really being uncomfortable. Like there's a lot of these things that, add up to making a kind of I guess if you have all of these attributes, you can more of a complete climber or athlete in general in life. But, I was never like the most talented in any one thing. But I just never really gave up. And I think it's just because I knew that if I did, there's a part of me that just wouldn't be fulfilled.
Like a bit of perfectionism, maybe, and maybe that's the wrong word.
I mean, I definitely have some of that, but I've also learned to, over the years, let go of a lot of that. I think I did in my early years. I think there's a paragraph in the book where I refer to not always trying things that are way over my head because I wanted to complete something before I moved on to the next. And so there was a bit of an orderly approach to it where I needed to build up those blocks of confidence. But yeah, I mean, through injury, through all this stuff, like it's just, I think it just, there's a desire to be in these places or do this
100%.
activity. And I think for some, it's a very, very strong desire. And for others, it's like it's cool. It's cool. It's like there's a desire, but it's maybe not, dictating their entire life. And I think for me, there was no other choice. I had to follow it completely.
For sure. Obviously, you spent over 30 years climbing. Your life has changed significantly in that time, becoming a father, husband, and now a mentor in the community. How has your relationship with climbing changed in regards to that over the years as you've aged?
Yeah, my relationship, I think, is very much the same. Like,
or maybe like your outlook or your obviously risk taking as you factor family, kids into the equation.
Yeah.
How has that changed your perception?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a number of things have changed and will inevitably change for everybody. One is I can't climb 7 days a week anymore. I'm turning 46 next week, and my body needs more rest than it used to. So, that's one thing. So now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've got, if I have a really big day or I have a really hard training session or a huge day in the mountains, I need 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 days to recover, depending on how deep into the cave you go. So now you're like, well, what do I do with those other 3 or 4 days? It's not like when I was 20 and I, could have 1 day off and go 6 days, 1 day off, go 5 days, like that type of thing. So inevitably you just start to have a bit more time in your life. And then, of course, with family and a responsibility to manage, 2 humans, two extra humans, you have to be healthy. I mean, parenting is really hard work. It's for sure for me the most rewarding journey ever. And watching them blossom, it's just incredible. But it takes a lot of physical work too, and also like. There is a mental and emotional component to it. Like if you're exhausted all the time, then, it's harder to be super present as a parent and also to earn income and to manage all the other stresses of life. Like, we're all struggling with inflation, cost of groceries. My son's 12 he's soon to be 12 and he eats more than I do. So all of a sudden I wasn't prepared for our grocery bill to just explode. So there's all these different kinds of stress that happen in life. And so you're trying to manage physical stress, emotional stress and train and do, so you got to be fit, but you also got to be out in the mountains doing the thing you love to do.
For sure.
Because that's why you justify the training, so you can be out there and be ready and play. So it's a huge juggling act, and I think ultimately, you just figure it out because again you have to. And I would without risk involved, I would just saying balancing day-to-day life.
Yeah.
I would say it's very similar to how I was in my 20s. I didn't know how I was going to climb full time. I just tried to figure it out, and you you have to just immerse yourself. It's the only way.
For sure.
You know, if I were to just sit back and think about how I was going to do it, it just probably would never happen.
Yeah.
You just actually have to do it. And I think that's why Nike's such a, everyone goes back to that. Like it always comes down to just doing it.
For sure.
And
action, right?
Yeah. It always comes down to that. There's only so far that words and thoughts can go. And eventually you just have to live and breathe and experience. And then in terms of risk, for sure, I mean, I started pulling back a lot even when I started dating my wife.
Yeah.
I was looking at the risks I was taking, and I was like, I don't get a return on that investment as much as just hanging out with somebody that I love.
Yeah.
And so our relationship helped me look at life a bit bigger, and I pulled back on certain things like snow and ice objectives, rock fall hazards, sharp rock, soloing, things like that I was getting more into, and I was in my mid-20s when I decided to sort of like analyze each objective a bit more closely. And now with kids, it's a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
And also, if you're not as fast as you were when you're 20 in the mountains, if you start to slow down, then you're in these like danger zones for longer.
Yeah.
Oh, fair, yeah. Didn't
You know what
do
I
that.
mean? Not that I'm attracted to danger zones anymore. I think it's amazing that you can still climb and be in the mountains without always taking on the highest risk.
100%.
Yeah.
A very important point to make is, especially with this festival and talking to all the people that we have, there's a big emphasis on the big adventures and the big objectives. But one of our first interviews we did, we were kind of broaching that adventure means different things to different people, and it doesn't always have to be first ascent on the biggest wall to be out there getting the benefits or enjoying nature,
Absolutely.
Is there ever a time where climbing felt more like a job for you than a passion, or has that passion kind of always been there?
The passion's always been there.
Yeah.
I feel very fortunate and very lucky. I remember this has come up in other conversations, especially with I climb a lot with like 20-year-olds because they're the ones who are living in their trucks right now and their van, and they have 7 days a week to, be flexible. And a lot of my, 40 to 50-year-old friends have responsibilities, jobs, they call it the squeeze years, right? Between 40 and 50, where you have, maybe you have a family, your parents are getting a little bit older, all these kinds of things are happening. And so a lot of my climbing friends now are like 20 years old, and they ask me a lot of questions about sponsorship because they're getting noticed for a lot of the things they're doing, which is amazing. But what I've told them, and when I've reflected on this, is that I've never felt pressure from any of my sponsors to do anything I wasn't motivated to do on my own.
Cool.
Like I've never been forced to go on a trip or an expedition, or
That's cool.
It's always been where I'm pulled to do. And I remember having a conversation with Patagonia is my main sponsor for the last 20 years. And I remember telling them like 2 years in, I was like, if this starts to like impede on my own climbing objectives, like I don't want to do it anymore. I'd rather just be a carpenter and do the trips that I want to do, the places I want to do. If they start to ask me to do things I'm not psyched on, then I would really just happily walk away. And that never happened. So
fortunately, I should say that didn't happen to you. Is that something that's prevalent in the industry of sponsors maybe pressuring athletes to go do certain objectives, or hey, maybe this hasn't been done, you should maybe look at it? Or
I mean, there's things like there's promotional trips you have to do, like sometimes just to get content. So there are sometimes trips. It depends on which company and how they structure their marketing and their budget. Sometimes they're like, well, this is how we've done it, and this is how we're gonna do it. And if you want to be a part of it, like that's what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
And then there's other companies that are a little bit more, you go do your thing, and we're gonna try to support it as best we can. And I think there's probably a little bit of everything from one end of the spectrum to the other. But honestly, I don't have those conversations a lot with people at this stage. Maybe earlier on I did, but
because you can see that becoming a little exploited, like exploiting the athletes at one point, right? Of like, hey, if you're not continuously taking these risks, putting yourself in these positions that we want you to, then maybe you can't do what you want to do long term,
Yeah, I think it's probably prevalent in all industries. I think maybe, did you watch a little bit of the recent Red Bull Rampage
No.
mountain biking event?
I have not. No.
I mean, there was people being airlifted every day. The courses were
Too extreme.
a little bit, they pushed it a lot from last year. And right now one guy is paralyzed from the chest down.
Oh, shit.
He's like maybe 25 years old,
It's like, is that what people really want to see?
They don't,
No.
the spectators don't want to
No,
see that.
definitely
And so
not.
there's this fine line between doing these spectacular events and asking people to try these, trying pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
In climbing, I think I want to say that because it's not, other than competition arena, it's not on a stage like that.
Yeah.
And
Right,
so what you do is very personal.
True.
And climbing's a lot slower moving. Like you push up to base camp and you're like, okay, how am I feeling? Or then you down climb. Or on a free solo, you might push up to a high point and you get there and it's slow going. You're analyzing the whole time. How am I feeling? How are the conditions? And then if you're not feeling it, I mean, I've down climbed off of hundreds of things, I guess, in the last 30 years. I've backed off. And when there's momentum in sports like snowboarding, mountain biking, so on, sometimes once you commit, that's
you're
it.
no turn
You're there,
back,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think climbing might be a little bit different in that regard.
Yeah, fair.
But I mean, people know about certain objectives in the mountain world, like, oh, this is unclimbed, or why is it unclimbed? Well, because it's very dangerous, And I think the people that ultimately end up going are the ones who are drawn to it.
Or maybe the ones that are more ready to accept that risk,
Yeah.
Wild.
Uplifted, a very reflective and personal book. What made you decide that now was the time to put your story into words?
I think it has a lot to do with my family, my kids. Yeah. When we started talking about this, but potentially putting this collection of stories together with Patagonia, it was, I think the kids had a lot to do with this full circle, kind of story to tell. And I think that's woven from the beginning to the end, is all the different phases that a lot of people will experience in their climbing life or in their mountain journey, like in their adventure life, from being young and kind of dumb and not knowing what you don't know and, and kind of surviving these things and be like, wow, I'm kind of glad we did that, but it was kind of touch and go for a while.
Yeah.
For some of those to becoming very knowledgeable and experienced, and then pushing things physically, pushing things mentally, and then, falling in love and how that changes, and then having kids and then how it changes again. And so, I think the timing is, like I said, our daughter's 8, our son is almost 12. And I started writing this 4 or 5 years ago, just kind of taking notes and things like that. And it seemed like the timing was right. So
Amazing.
It's been really good. And I think celebrating 30 years is kind of a nice little,
Well,
Yeah,
nice
like
little cat,
a little bow tie at the end, ties it up nicely. So.
100%.
How did you approach translating such an intense thing like climbing that's like so physical and visual into the written form? Like, how did you approach that?
I struggled with it, to be honest. I don't consider myself a great writer. When I read really beautiful writing and
Yeah.
I'm like, wow.
You're like, I'm not that guy.
I wish I could do something like that. And also I'm a little bit self-conscious about my story, in the sense that there wasn't a tremendous amount of, I'm not somebody who's really attracted to the dark side of climbing.
Right.
I do things because I'm inspired by others, or I'm inspired by my partner, or I'm inspired by the mountain. And so most of my climbing, way more than 90% comes from a place of joy and happiness.
Cool.
And so I'm like, well, that's boring to write about.
There's no drama.
Yeah.
A lot of the mountain or the adventure books, it doesn't become like a sellable story until there's a tragedy involved, right?
For sure.
Which we're kind of in that same boat, whereas we don't really like to focus on the underbelly or the dark side of things. We try to keep it positive and inspiring to people. So,
and I think the dark side is, a lot of us are curious, why did this? How are people dealing with this tragedy? Mm-hmm. Or how did their upbringing create this motivation right, things like that. And I think there's a lot of questions there. But when I looked at my path, I'm like, wow. Well, for one, I was born in Canada, which has been a very peaceful country for the last 40 years. For the most part, it's not perfect, but it's been a very peaceful country. We've had a lot of opportunities. There is really good climbing across Canada. I have really incredible parents and 2 awesome sisters that, we're all still really tight. Mm-hmm. And so I just was like, well, what am I going to write about? Yeah. And as I started talking to people and looking back at experiences, I did cherry pick these moments that were kind of more pivotal. They were, there's definitely like close calls and a few accidents that have happened that were very, very close to being, life altering or life ending. And so I touched on those. I also touched on pregnancy with my wife and how that changed my psychology. So that opening chapter is all about basically the period in which it changed. Yeah. And I knew that I would never look at climbing the same way again. So that was kind of my mid-30s. And then, some close calls in my, pretty much all the time. There's always a variable for an accident, when there's mountains that are moving and there's humans involved and you get tired and, all these things. So, I touched on all of those, but I think the overarching theme is just how one might move through a climbing journey. Yeah, cool. And it was, in the end, I was less overwhelmed by it as I started to see it take shape. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you kind of sit back and look at your old adventures or your old climbs, is there any moments that kind of stand out to you that maybe you see differently now than you did at the time? Like you kind of touched on it earlier that perceptually, of course, your objectives have changed. Any like past story that you think like, wow, that was way crazier than I thought at the time?
That's a tough question. I guess, I've been climbing for people are like, what's the climb you're most proud of? And I'm like, there isn't really one. It's, when you climb, whatever it is, hundreds of days a year for 30 years, it all just sort of, I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that I'm still climbing and I'm still active and I still love, and I'm still able to push my physical, even though I don't know if I'll ever be stronger at 46 and beyond than I ever was from, 15 to 45. Yeah. But you can change your, I think maybe I have more endurance. There's other ways to push myself. So I'm really proud of, I guess, that the whole package as opposed to one particular moment. But I'd say like from a climbing professional perspective, the chapter on Cobra Crack, which was it's 19 years now. It's like crazy. Yeah. Wild. Yeah. I feel like it was maybe 9 years ago instead of 19. It goes fast. I mean, a decade goes a lot faster now than I ever thought it would. Even 1 year goes by faster than I ever thought it would or could. But that particular climb, I was pretty determined to stick with it till the end. And when it did happen, there was a bunch of media follow-up after that. And I think it's because of the media machine. There was the Real Rock guys and the Sender Films guys were present. DDA was actively trying the route, which created a bit more of like a I guess more
competition. I guess.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more tension that otherwise would have just gone almost unnoticed.
Yeah, fair enough.
I've done lots of routes in the same grade that like they came and went and I never really talked about it.
It's like I did it. It's done. Yeah.
And it's probably like some of them have been climbed maybe twice since, in 15 years or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So I'm pretty proud of those routes also, but I'd say that was the one that captured most people's imagination. And it was at a time where climbing was actually going through a growth phase. And so I still get like tons of letters. I think there's a lot of luck involved with timing when you look back at life. But
like right place, right time type
thing? Yeah. But I mean, if you're not there committed to living in your car, that you're not going to be the one who does it. But
100%.
I was just happened to be lucky enough to be that determined at that time. But yeah, there was a growth phase in climbing. And I still get a lot of emails from people who are like, that was the first video I ever saw. And that video is the one that turned me on to climbing, which is like really a cool a very cool experience for me to have, to be a part of that.
100%.
Yeah.
It makes me think of earlier in the week, I asked some polar explorers a pretty dumb question. And I was like, what kind of training or that goes into what you do? And it's like, well, they don't train specifically for it. It's about staying in that
environment.
Exactly. In that environment and in that mindset that like you're ready to go all the time. And I think about it with myself and snowboarding. It's the same thing. Like I'm riding the days that aren't good so that when the day that is good comes around, I can ride all day and everyone else is gassed at Trappers having a beer. And at 3 o'clock, I'm still out there getting it. So I think it goes to show the mentality of people that excel in their, especially adventure mountain sports, is like, you're not training for a specific objective. You're in this space, in this lifestyle to be ready to go for whatever presents itself. Which is super cool.
Yeah. It just becomes part of your life. That's it. It's not separate, Yeah.
So many people that are outside of climbing, they see it as purely about adrenaline and danger. What truths about the climbing world or the climbing life that you hope readers that aren't super in the scene take away from it?
I suppose the overarching theme is really following your heart. At the end of the day, like not putting a lot of weight on what other people think you should do with your life. It's listening very carefully to yourself. There's references in there. Had I not, most of my friends and my parents did want me or were going and wanted me to go to college or university. I didn't want to go, and I skipped it so I could work and climb. And I figured I could always go back to school.
Yeah.
So that was like phase 1. And then phase 2 was moving out west. It was really hard because I'm really close with my family, but I moved out west because that's where I needed to be to feel whole, I guess. And because of that commitment, I met my wife. And so, and she's like the next, climbing's like basically my first love. And then she's this whole other chapter of my life. We've been together almost 20 years. And then because of my commitment to that journey, meeting my wife, and then having kids, I'm having this new level of commitment in life and experiences and everything. And so it's all stems from just following my heart from a teenage. And so I think ultimately that might be the main theme is, it's not wrong to listen to other people's advice and take in as many, perspectives as possible, but ultimately the decision has to come down to you and how you feel internally. And I think if there was one theme I think I could communicate to young readers, it would be that.
Amazing. Great advice, honestly. Maybe the big risk you took unknowingly was leaving Ontario and following your true passion in the first place,
For me, for sure. Yeah.
Back to the festival as a whole, you mentioned at the beginning that you've spent a lot of time here at the Banff Center Mountain Film Book Festival over the years. What does this event represent to you being a local now?
What does it represent? Well, I guess it represents, a big community at the end of the day.
Because there's no place where these types of people get together often.
No. It's very rare that I see this many faces in this many different, aspects of mountain culture all in one place. So.
Especially like in climbing, mountaineering, and like the really purest adventure sports. Like you mentioned earlier, it's super individualistic. When you're out there doing these things, you're usually by yourself or with a small team. And having all these incredible people together sharing their stories has some crazy power to it.
Absolutely. And, not everyone can make it every year. I mean, the community's far too large for that. But every year there's new faces and old faces, but not everyone can make it all the time. And so every year it changes a little bit, and you create new relationships, and you're inspired by new presentations. And
is there any conversations or new connections that you've made this year that have kind of stood out to you?
Well, I suppose being busier with trying to juggle the kids this year, but I'd say the conversation that I really enjoyed listening to was the edge of alpinism. I thought that was a very, honest, and yeah. I mean, I feel very similar to everything that everybody discussed. But overall, it was just a meaningful conversation, and I thought everyone did such a great job of opening up, reflecting, and I think it shows a little bit to the audience or to the public sort of how they think about things, and I think that's very interesting. And
there's a tremendous humbleness that's in this whole, whether it's man, women, climbing or mountaineering. There's a intense humbleness in these people that accomplish incredible things, yourself included. Honestly, it's really wild to see. Like,
I know it seems like people to just like undersell their accomplishments in like this whole scene. Like even the other day, and it's like at Joe's book talk, it's like people just don't think about it. I guess someone said, they're like, well, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal until it's done and people find out about it, and they're like, holy shit, you did that?
Yeah,
like that's insane. It's like it doesn't like really, the people are just doing it to do it, not to have like the fame or the pride. You know what I mean? It's an odd scene, but it's very cool.
So cool, honestly. Very humbling in that sense. Like maybe I think everyone could take a page out of that book, so to speak.
Yeah, it was. Both those talks were amazing. Something that I've learned to reflect on is like that when you love the process more than you want the outcome,
right,
then the outcome is more likely to occur.
Yeah.
And if you want the outcome but you don't love the process, it's just it's kind of like you're swimming upstream a little bit, and maybe all the intentions aren't there. So when they refer to that being like, I was just in the moment, I had no idea the impact it would have on anyone else or myself in a future date.
Yeah, exactly.
That just shows how much we love the moment we love the doing, I suppose.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes when it's done is the hardest part. The doing is actually 90% of the joy.
For sure.
Right? Rather than saying I've done. Because when it's done, the doing stops.
Yeah.
It's kind of this weird.
Of course, you can almost see like the real work begins after the project, like it's depending on.
Well, I mean, I suppose the real work in terms of like the follow up, like one,
like that is where the more like doing the objective or the task that you love is easy. It's
easy from my standpoint. I can't speak for anyone else, but I feel like there is a theme of like we love that part, and then it's done, and then it has it may or may not have an impact on people, but there's always this follow up. Like going back to things like Cobra Crack or other climbs that I've done, I didn't know what was going to happen. It could have just fizzled out after like a couple of weeks, but some of them don't, and then you realize how many people you've been able to inspire. I mean, Cobra Crack gets climbed all summer, every summer now. Like if you hike up there, there's just this awesome crew of people just throwing themselves at it. And it's super cool that people had seen this or inspired by it from all around the world. And, it might at least get climbed every year now by somebody.
Yeah.
That's cool to be a part of that.
You kickstarted that.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
When you look back at your younger version of yourself, what do you think he'd say if he saw where you are now?
I think kind of like going back to earlier in the conversation where I'm like, the thing that I'm most proud of is that I've created a life around the thing that I love the most.
No doubt.
It'd be like any kind of an artist, being like, I just love this type of creation, and then being able to create a whole life around it. I think that's the thing I'm the most proud of. And it's not exactly by accident. I mean, I had heroes too. I had Peter Croft, Lynn Hill, Barry Blanchard. Like there's a lot of people who've created a whole life around their passion, thing that they love to do. And so it's not the same as like, go to school, get this degree, and then you could probably get this job. Like that's a very clear path for most academic choices. But in the mountain culture, it's like there is really no defining. But you have these heroes, and you're like, well, how did they do it?
Right.
And I guess now at my age, I'm become one of those people where people are like, how did he do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Come full circle.
yeah, I think it's come full circle. And I think that's probably why the book seems like a pretty good time, you know?
Okay.
But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like you got to just commit for 10 years.
For sure.
And then see where you're at.
And love the journey
Check
on the way.
Check in 10 years and see how it's going.
I think that's what it takes.
So what's next for you, Sonnie? Any projects you want to let us in on that you're working on, or that you could let us in on?
Gosh, I mean, there are definitely some peaks just here in Canada that are not even less than 3-hour drive from here that I've had my eye on. That some certain aspects, faces that haven't been climbed before that are gorgeous, beautiful, stunning. Like they're so attractive. It's timing. It's finding the amount of time I need.
Right.
It's finding partnerships that can align with the time that I have.
Yeah.
Things that are getting a little bit more challenging now is when you have these, now there's 3 people in my life. There's my wife and her trips and her objectives and her needs, and then there's my 2 children. They might have summer camp, and the other one might have another thing going on. And then dad gets like 10 days in the middle of August.
Yeah.
And then it rains every day. And you're like, well, there goes my summer for that particular climb, right? So whereas before it was like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to start in June and I don't care if it takes me till September.
Yeah.
I'm going to be there until it's done. And that now all of a sudden you have 1/10 of the time.
Yeah, the windows get smaller and
A
smaller.
little more time management required, I guess, eh?
Big time. And then there's huge components of luck. I mean, especially in the mountains, you might have a slushy year and there's no snowfall or it's icy, or in the summer we're dealing with smoke now.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, I pretty much won't hike out in smoke anymore. I did when I was younger because I didn't know the effects.
We talked to James Baylog about his documenting of forest fires, and he seems to think that he had some pretty serious health concerns linked to being around forest fires for so long.
Right.
Which is pretty mind-blowing to think of.
Yeah. No, I think there's more and more science coming out.
Yeah.
Especially when you're at high altitude and high activity.
For sure.
And I look back at some photos where I'm like on the summit of some giant mountain, and you look down and you can't see the road, you can't see the valley. It's just like all smoke.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, I think I was like out there for like 14 hours just huffing and puffing.
Oh yeah.
What does that do to your body?
Yeah, and
I've done that fishing. Just like you're walking, like we walked up to what was that, Arnica? That's like a pretty straight up hike. Like it's like 2 hours just straight up.
Right.
Like
yeah.
you get up there and you can barely. It's like a tiny, very tiny lake. And like you look across and you're like, you look back at pictures, you're like, holy man, it was smoky that day. Like, how the hell did we even make it up there without dying? Like it was just, it's wide. Like you don't think about it at the moment, right?
No,
like in the
no.
moment you're kind of just out there doing your thing. But
And sometimes things get worse. Sometimes you get trapped out there. Like in the morning, it's been okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think we can, as long as we hike slow, I think we'll feel fine, no headaches or anything like that.
Mid-afternoon,
and then
it blows
mid-afternoon,
in,
it's like it blows in. And so anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is these windows are like big objectives like that might take multi-day trips. They just get a little bit tighter and tighter, and there's more factors. Could be rain, could be that my son gets a flu or something, right?
Yeah, anything. Yeah.
And then that 10-day that you had on the calendar is just like it disappears. So other projects that I have more control over are things like sport climbing, where it's more performance based, and you get more and more chances,
For sure.
Throughout the year. So I'm actually trying to climb like one of the harder routes I've ever done. It's been done before, so it's not anything breakthrough. But if I could pull it off, I think it would be the hardest physical rock climb, like single pitch that I've ever done. I'm like 50 days on it now over 3 years.
Wild.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So every year I put in 15, 16 days on it, or sessions, I guess. I mean, it's not like a whole day, but and it's coming together, but it's a big project. So we'll see. I'll give it one more year this year and see if I can pull it off. Personally, it would feel very gratifying. It's not newsworthy in any sense of when you look at today's like what kids are doing today.
Oh, that's insane.
So it'll be a big deal for me personally, and that's gonna where I'm gonna put the focus, and then after that, we'll see. But having a foundation of building up my strength and endurance again to like the highest point I've ever had is I'm hoping the theory is that it lays the foundation again for the next 30 years.
Fair enough.
if that makes
Amazing.
sense.
Absolutely. Just one that just randomly came to my head that I feel like I want to ask you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Obviously, it's a pretty contested field, but climbing with no gear, taking that added risk of free soloing, or people can go either way on it. People say it's the ultimate test of climbing. Some people say it's unnecessary risk. Where do you fall in that?
I think they both work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you decide it's the ultimate form of climbing, then it is.
Yeah.
And I think if you're like, I don't need it in my life, you don't. I've done both.
Yeah.
You know, I love free soloing.
Yeah.
I really, really do.
For what reason?
Oh, just you're getting more out of ultimately you're just getting more out of the experience.
Just a truer connection to the rock.
Yeah, and you can move a little faster
True.
because you're not stopping to put the gear in. You're not stopping to pull the rope up.
Yeah.
You can cover a lot of ground. I mean, when Honnold did El Cap, I think it took him like 4 hours.
Wow.
So
That's it, eh? Just
like
straight up and forward.
just straight up, and it wasn't like he was huffing and puffing. You know, it's just this steady flow state that you're in.
For sure.
And so when you love, it's like when you love something, it's doing more of it. Generally, free soloing allows you to do that, but also there's this incredible. There's a deep sense of, I heard a really simple quote the other day, and I loved it. And I'm like, how have I not heard or thought about this before? But basically, at the end of the day, it's take dangerous things seriously. And so when you're free soloing and you're taking everything more serious, the experience is deeper and richer because you're thinking deeply
100%.
about every move.
Right.
You're very thoughtful. And so that thoughtfulness is not easily accessed when you're on a rope or a top rope, for example.
Good.
When you're on a top rope, there is no thoughtfulness. You're just flowing and you're enjoying the movement. When you're free soloing, you're flowing, but you're deep in thoughtfulness. And I think that's profound, like heavy.
That's what I was looking for. It's like the why, you know what I mean? Like you can do it with ropes, like why do it without?
Yeah.
But you encapsulated that perfectly there.
I'm glad.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, Sonnie. This has been really awesome and again, inspiring. Go grab your copy of Uplifted now. Can they get it somewhere in the Bow Valley for our locals that are listening?
I know for sure Minodes has the book in
Beautiful.
stock, and also places in Canmore have it as well.
Amazing. Big shout out to
Banff.
Minodes and everyone in the local climbing community. If you've made it this far, please don't forget to give us a like and subscribe. Big shout out to Drink Shaft. You can always get yours at Townhouse Liquor or at the Rose and Crown. They got that alcoholic stuff on tap, so go grab yourself a couple of those. Thank you so much again for taking the time to chat with us, Sonnie. Big thanks to the Banff Center Mountain Film Book Festival. We're nearing the end of our coverage here.
No doubt.
It's getting a little bittersweet, but some fantastic conversation, so we can't thank you enough. That's all we got for you today, and like every week,
See you next Tuesday.